Hi, I'm back. Hey guys, it's Story. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Story and I talk about books and streaming, but a lot of you know me as a big Twilight fan. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands here. I'm sure y'all forgot, but you know, I'm a psycho and seem to be the only one that remembers exactly a year ago from today on May 4th, 2020. There was a really big announcement. Yeah, it's been a year. It's been a year since the announcement of the release of Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. Wow, can we do like a little clip here? If my editing abilities have gotten better, I don't know, we'll see. I was so excited for this announcement a year ago. I was so excited. I couldn't talk, wasn't very coherent in my video, and I love watching that video back because I just had so much excitement. It really puts into perspective a different outlook on reading. I can kind of put myself back in my shoes then and get all excited for books and reading again, and I just wanted to celebrate the 1-year anniversary. So Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer came out on August 4th, 2020, so we're not to that anniversary yet, but you already know I'm gonna be doing something for that. I have a really exciting video in the making that I think is gonna blow your mind, honestly, so just be ready for that. But in anticipation of the release of Midnight Sun, I had an entire series here on my channel called Countdown to Midnight Sun. You might have watched it. If you didn't, I will put the playlist in the description down below. I usually just title it Twilight Playlist. I have a ton of Twilight content on my channel, like literally everything. I consider myself a Twilight expert, if you will. So I'm really excited to get into some books you should read if you are fans of the Twilight Saga. Also, just a hint, if you want to receive a copy of Midnight Sun, then be sure to like this video, subscribe, of course. If you aren't subscribed, I will be checking that a subscriber wins this giveaway, and comment, of course. So I'll be going through all the comments, and then once I pick someone randomly, I will check to see if they're subscribed and they like the video, and then you will receive a copy of Midnight Sun. I only have one to give away, but I will have another to give away in August as well when I do my Twilight video for the release day anniversary. I know this is like the 5th copy of Midnight Sun I've given away on my channel now, but just in case anyone out there still hasn't read it and you are a diehard Twilight fan, I just want to be able to give it to you, and yeah, you just deserve to read it if you want to read it. So in my eyes, if you like Twilight or the Twilight Saga in general, you probably like 1 or 2 or all of 3 types of books. 1, you probably like dark romance. When I look at the books I'm still reading now, I have realized that Twilight made me fall in love with dark romance. Specifically, Twilight is paranormal romance, but I feel like dark romance can be kind of anything really. It can be fantasy, it can be paranormal, or it can just be really dark. I don't know how else to explain it, but I've definitely kept a hold of this as a reader. I love some dark romance, specifically forbidden romance. I'm a big villain girl. If the main character is not supposed to be with the villain, but her and the villain have a thing, like, I am down for that. Or 2, you like vampires or werewolves, but most likely vampires. I still to this day love vampires in books. I don't really gravitate towards books that are solely about vampires anymore, to be honest. I think I've kind of surpassed vampire dramas or vampire romances, but I do like when vampires are in books. 3, you like fantasy worlds with multiple characters. So this could be an urban fantasy, a high fantasy, magical realism, whatever you want to describe fantasy as. You like a genre with an extra something. More than contemporary. It has to be more than contemporary, and there needs to be multiple characters that you fall in love with. A big reason people love the Twilight Saga is because of the Cullens. Twilight is my favorite book within the saga, and it's personally because I get to discover and learn about Edward Cullen, but also I get to learn about the Cullens and their backstories and how they all came about. And yeah, the Cullens are just really intriguing. I know some people people read the saga because of solely the Cullens. So yeah, you probably like at least one of those things. So my recommendations today all focus in those groups. I actually have some books that are exactly like Twilight as well, so you can hit all three categories if you want, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So the first two I'm going to talk about, I actually haven't read, but I have to tell you about these books if you haven't heard of them already. They are my top 2 recommended books on my channel. Anytime someone knows I like Twilight or they watch a Twilight video, they tell me to read this series. So I'm going to start with this one, and that is the Crave series by Tracy Wolff. So the first one is called Crave, but it is a series. You can just tell by the cover that this is going to be very Twilight-y. I'm gonna be honest, when I first got recommended this book, I was not interested in it at all. I thought, I'm way past this as a reader, I just don't want to read this anymore, but so many people read it and say it's really good for today's time. It's more of like a modern Twilight. I think it's still pretty trashy, but it's a bit more acceptable than the Twilight Saga, I guess. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and read you part of the synopsis since I haven't read it yet, but odds are if you're watching this video, you might have already read this series. It says, "My whole world changed when I stepped inside the academy. Nothing is right about this place or the other students. Here I am, a mere mortal among gods or monsters. I still can't decide which of these warring factions I belong to, if I belong at all. I only know the one thing that unites them is their hatred of me. Then there's Jackson Vega, a vampire with deadly secrets who hasn't felt anything for 100 years, but there's something about him that calls to me, something broken in him that somehow fits with what's broken in me." Which could spell death for us all, because Jackson walled himself off for a reason, and now someone wants to wake a sleeping monster, and I'm wondering if I was brought here intentionally as the bait. I'm not gonna lie, besides the obvious Twilight-y sentences in that synopsis, I think I would really like this. Again, it has those 3 things that I love. I love, you know, dark, forbidden romances. I love worlds where there's a lot of characters, fantasy worlds specifically, and there's vampires in this. So this is to a T Twilight, but like set in an academy for like monsters and gods. Sign me up. So yeah, if you want exactly Twilight, I feel like you should definitely check this out. Next is Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. I always recommend this to Twilight fans. This book came out not long after Twilight. It's basically the same thing, but instead of a vampire, the main love interest, Pat, is a fallen angel. He is an angel and he has fallen to earth, and so obviously it's a dark romance, it's a fantasy world, not technically vampires, but again, if you want something exactly like Twilight, then I would pick this up. It's a series as well. I think there's 4 books in the series, and yeah, I've always wanted to read this, but I have to be in that. Please don't get mad at me if you're a Twilight fan, I'm calling it trashy. Can we all just agree, like, we know it's a little trashy at least, and I just have to be in the mood for like a trashy, dark fantasy romance. Lately, I've been reading dark fantasy romances that aren't trashy. They're more like modern for today's readers, and I'm gonna recommend some of those as well. But yeah, there's not much else to say about this. It is a human girl falling in love with a fallen angel. And I believe there's a whole lot of other characters, and they're both in high school, so I mean, you didn't already know about this, now you do. Pick it up if you want to basically read Twilight. Next, I'm gonna recommend a couple books that have vampires in it. I read one of these books and it is really good. The other one I haven't read, but I heard it's a really good vampire romance drama as well, and that is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I've been recommended this book so many times. It is about a group of vampires that have taken over New Orleans, so if you like Vampire Diaries, or more specifically the originals, then you will really like this, obviously, because the originals is set in New Orleans. We actually went to New Orleans a couple years ago and I really loved it. It definitely has those paranormal vampire dark kind of vibes. It's a great setting for a vampire romance drama. I believe our main girl falls in love with the leader of the vampire cult, and there's a map as well of New Orleans, and so I just know this is really epic. I have a couple friends that really love this series, but yeah, if you want, again, just like a vampire romance where there's a lot of characters, yeah, just pick this up. This is still semi-new. I think it came out last year or the year before. I believe someone said the vampires actually don't come come into play until like the second half of the book, but it is a series. I know the second book is out. I don't know if the third book is out yet though, but yeah, definitely pick this one up. And then finally, a book I have read is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. If you are one of the people that liked Midnight Sun more than the saga, then you really need to read this book because this is so similar. And I also find it crazy that there's so many people that do like Midnight Sun more. I didn't necessarily. I really did like Midnight Sun, but I don't think it beats my favorite Twilight books. Anyways, the main character of this book is August, and he is a monster, but he really doesn't want to be. He was born as a monster, but he just wants to be normal. He wants to be human. He wants to be the good guy. He has a lot of internal conflict, good versus bad, morals versus immortality type of stuff. You know what I'm getting at here. It's basically Midnight Sun. August is the same type of character as Edward. I don't know if the character development is the same. You'll just have to read and find out, but we are in a world where there are several different monsters. So August is a type of monster, but there's also vampires in this world. So August isn't a vampire, but there's basically like a zombie type of monster, I'm pretty sure. We follow him, and then we follow a human girl who is the daughter of like the ringleader of the vampires and zombies, like the bad monsters. And August is kind of like a good monster, but he still feels like he's the bad guy, which is exactly like Edward. Like Edward and his family are so good, yet he has like so much internal conflict about being the bad guy. It's so annoying. Basically the same, and this is a duology. The second book I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This one I gave 4, but it is really good and I really love August. So if you love Edward, you're gonna love August. Now I'm gonna get into some fantasy books with multiple characters, or at least some sort of fantasy world. It can be urban, high fantasy, whatnot, but it's really good, and there's lyrical writing and there's multiple characters. A fantasy story you'll fall in love with. I know I've recommended this series so many times on my channel. I'm probably going to film a video for it here soon since the new book is coming out, and that is Caraval by Stephenie Garber, of course. I just have a very strong feeling if you like Twilight, you're going to like the Caraval series. There's a lot of characters, it's its own fantasy world, but there's a lot of romance and a lot of mystery involved. And so I just feel like it's the same type of themes. There is a game. I know there's not really like games in Twilight. We follow 2 sisters in this series. One is possibly in a love triangle, so there you go, love triangle. I feel like obviously if you like Twilight, you have to like love triangles. I don't know what the hate is with love triangles. Like, why do we hate on that trope? I think it's a fine trope. If it's being overdone, that's one thing, but I don't know. I don't mind love triangles. There's definitely one in here, and then the other sister has some romance with her as well. And so yeah, it has all the same themes, and it's just a really, really fun series. Like if you want to start a fantasy series that has a lot of characters that you will fall in love with, but you will just have so much fun, and there's so much mystery, and you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in this series, then you have to pick this up. Next is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is a very, very lyrical and whimsical fantasy story. As you know, in Stephenie Meyer's little announcement for Midnight Sun, she mentioned this book, and so I can't not include it. It is so reflective, so I'm sorry if I'm blinding you. It is a very, very big book, so go into it knowing that. If you like Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, the links of those books, Midnight Sun, then you'll like the length of this book. It did take me quite a while. It took me like at least 2 weeks to finish this book. But we are following Laszlo Strange, who is a librarian in this fantasy town, but he has always dreamed of going to this other fantasy town that people for some reason have forgotten. A group comes to his town to take people over there to kind of discover it and learn about it. And so he really wants to go, and you're basically just following him through his journey, but that is not even like the smallest bit to this story. Like I wish I could tell you more and how it relates to Twilight, but it would all be spoilers, and you know how I am about spoilers on my channel, so I'm not going to spoil you. Just know that the last 2/3 of this book is not about that. That's more like the first third. There is a really good dreamy fantasy, super dreamy fantasy-like romance in this story. There's a world you're learning about, a ton of characters, no vampires, but there are fantasy creatures, and yeah, it's just like a lot of learning, a lot of lyrical writing. If you like like lyrical writing, you will absolutely adore this book. I'm also going to recommend Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I have not read this book yet, but I am going to super soon. It just sounds amazing. It's kind of short, to be honest, shorter than I thought it would be, but our main character falls in love with one of the 7 princes of hell. Girl, you already know. This is like, that just sounds so similar to Twilight. I can't. Dark romance, like it gets me every time. I love it so much. Main character falling in love with a villain, forbidden love. That's my thing. It's very fantasy-esque. Don't know if there's vampires in here, but there's definitely like dark fantasy creatures. It is a fantasy, so I mean, I just feel like this goes hand in hand. It says on the back, I understood why some thought kissing one of the wicked was addictive. Each time his tongue touched mine, it felt as if the ground beneath me quaked, like we were a cataclysmic event that shouldn't be. I have some friends that really love this book, and so I really want to get to it. I'm reading a lot of like contemporary right now. Honestly, the books I've been reading have been really good, and so I'm kind of on like that spring summer contemporary kick, but once I get back into fantasy, this is the first one I'm going to be picking up. I'm also going to recommend Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. So I have read I've not read the duology. I've just read Six of Crows. I plan on reading Crooked Kingdom super soon. Honestly, Six of Crows kind of put me in a slump because it was so good. So yeah, I could recommend you that as well, but it's not exactly like Twilight. And besides the trilogy, Shadow and Bone comes before the duology Six of Crows, which I realize that's probably confusing if you don't know anything about it, but the show just came out, so if you want to read the books and watch the show, that could be an experience for you as well. The show is really good, way better than I thought it was gonna be. Holy crap, The Darkling. The Darkling. Also Kaz. I love Cass and Jesper. I would definitely recommend Shadow and Bone for you if you want to start another fantasy series, a really good one. There is a lot of characters, there are fantasy creatures, there is a dark romance, there is a love triangle. I think there's like a love square actually, if that's what they're called. So yeah, Twilight on steroids, really. I feel like it's probably more fast-paced than Twilight though. So maybe not as much of a slow burn, but yeah, you should definitely check this out and then watch the show afterwards. First season only goes over the first book, so you could actually start the show after reading the first book, so that could be really fun. I'm also gonna pop up 2 more that I didn't plan to talk about, but I just feel like talking about. Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis. This is one of my new favorite books. I think it's the best book I've read this year. Yeah, I read Six of Crows last year, so this is probably my favorite book I've read so far this year. It's a lot like Caraval, the Caraval series I just mentioned earlier. It's a bit different. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars instead of 5, but it really just has first book problems. I think the second book is going to like fix those problems for me, and so I'm really excited for the second book. I have a feeling I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 stars. It's such a good book. I had a subscriber, Abby, send me this book from my Amazon wishlist, and I'm so happy she did because I just love this book with all my heart. I just raved about it in a recent video, a book haul I just did. I will put in a card up here if you haven't seen it already, but I just love this book so much. There's a lot of characters. It is fantasy. It's its own fantasy world, and there is a romance, a dark romance, a semi-love triangle. Semi. So it's like kind of there, but not really. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of little hints, that sort of thing, but there's romance as well. And so a lot of the same things. There is a competition in this book as well. So it's a lot like Caraval, but yeah, that's an option for you too. I think you should read it just because I like it, honestly, because I feel like if you like the same books that I do, then you're probably gonna like this as well. And it's a new release. And then I'm also going to mention These Violet Delights by Chloe Gong. I've not read this one yet, but I heard that it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling based in Shanghai, and it's a really good dark romance. Is what someone told me. A blood feud between 2 gangs runs the streets red, numbing the city to its chaos. The year is 1926 in Shanghai. Okay, yeah, I feel like, I don't know. Definitely forbidden love. Obviously, it could be just a dark romance, historical fiction type of thing, but yeah, I just keep getting recommended this, and I really do want to read it. I just haven't made time for it, so I'm just gonna mention that one really quick. Of course, I have to mention Stephenie's other books, like The Chemist. This is an adult, it's her first adult book, and it is a thriller for sure. A little bit of a mystery, but definitely a thriller. Our main character is a former CIA agent, but she is running from the CIA for some reason. So we don't know why, we don't know what she did, we don't know who she's gonna meet or what's gonna happen, but it's really good. If you are older now, maybe you read Twilight when you were younger, and now you're older and you just have different different reading tastes like me, then I would definitely pick this up. I'm not even a thriller person, and I read this before I had all of these books, like these 200 books that I have, and it got me back into reading. It's definitely big, but all her books are big. So yeah, I just feel like if you like Twilight and you're older now, you just want like more adult books, then you should definitely try this. And then of course I'm not going to get it out, but The Host, if you haven't read The Host, you need to read The Host. I definitely do want to give it a try. I want to do like a little read along on my channel for The Host, to be honest. I don't know how much interest I would get for that though, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. And then finally, the last books I'm going to recommend are more based on Stephenie Meyer. So now that I've went through the 3 top kind of themes to Twilight, maybe you're a big fan and you just want to read Stephenie Meyer's favorite books, I want to mention Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, of course. This is Bella and Edward's book. It's like their thing, it's their book. Bella reads it in Twilight and Edward's read it a million times, of course, because he's like 1,000 years old. But I bought this personally so that I could read what they were talking about and experience it for myself. I know some people read this like in high school or whatever, but yeah, I just wanted to learn about Heathcliff and what they were talking about and stuff like that. I still haven't read it. It's just a different experience to read this book and then read Twilight over again, so that's something you could totally do if you want to get that like Twilight feeling. And those are all of the books I'm recommending today for Twilight fans. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video if you like this video. Of course, if you want to win a copy of Midnight Sun, I just, you know, want to do it for fun, want to give back, why not? Make sure that you are subscribed, of course, and that you comment down below. You can comment anything you want. Yeah, I can't believe it's been a year. It makes me so sad. Again, thanks for watching. I will see you in my next one.